So, House Republicans announced last week that members of the media and other qualified individuals will now have access to view footage from January 6, 2021. This obviously is backtracking on the promise that Speaker McCarthy made to the American people when he said, "We will make all of the footage public." That's what he says. Now, according to these instructions, you have to be a qualifying nonprofit organization or a news outlet, and they have all of this strict criteria that you have to meet in order to be able to view this particular footage. And I wanted to bring in here someone who has combed through endless hours of this footage, Steve Baker. He is an investigative journalist and also part of the BlazeTV team. So we appreciate you being here, BlazeTV contributor. So Steve, how many hours do you think that you've sifted through on this so far?
If we're talking about the 41,000 hours of video, I've only had a few days, and nobody can go through all that video.
Right,
it would
course.
take years of endless, nonstop viewing to get through it. And in fact, under the new rules that they put out, as one of my friends put it, you would have to go all the way back to when David was slaying Goliath and start then at getting your 3 hours a week in order to complete the viewing of all of that video. So it's a daunting and an impossible task to go through it all, but you have to be aware of what you're looking for before you even start. And fortunately, when I got in, I knew exactly what I was looking for.
So what is your take on Kevin McCarthy and the House GOP's new criteria all of a sudden that you have to meet in order to view this footage?
Obviously, we were very excited when they initially announced that they were going to put that video up somewhere. In fact, I wanted Elon to put it up. I wanted his programmers to put it up and make it even more user-friendly to access. And I thought that was a great idea, but obviously nobody bought on that. And it was just shortly thereafter that they withdrew. And then they used Tucker as the first guinea pig, and then Julie Kelly, John Solomon, Joe Hanneman from the Epoch Times, and then myself were the 5 independent journalists or journalists that were allowed to go in. And they essentially, the House administration staffers used us as the guinea pigs to figure out how they wanted to set up the new guidelines.
Are you going to, so you get to keep your allowance to your access to go view that footage under these new rules?
Yeah, as of today, I received a message from House admin that I would be allowed back in next week.
Okay. What can you make of all of the footage? I know there's a lot that you're piecing together, trying to get out to the American public, but just in a broader sense, what you can say right now, what do you make of all of this footage that you've combed through and you try to square it with the narrative that the left continues to sell the American public?
Well, first of all, it's incredibly difficult because you have to understand, as I mentioned before, the enormity of the process. There's over 1,700 cameras inside and outside the Capitol. Over 40,000 hours just on the day alone of January 6th. And then once you start going in and looking at all of this, there's so many gaps. There's so much wasted time that you spend. It's such a daunting process because if you are tracking a person, an individual, be it a protester who did bad or somebody you're trying to help on their defense, tracking them through and then finding the missing gaps in the footage or where the cameras are missing. And then, unfortunately, there are gaps in the footage of cameras that were working, and all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 hours missing in the middle of the riot itself. And so we're running into that problem. And then, of course, there are also, out of the 1,700 plus cameras, there's some of those cameras, there's no footage whatsoever, although the Capitol Police have told us that all of their cameras were functional that day.
Convenient, very convenient.
Very convenient. Well, so there was a CBS report today that the FBI is still searching for, they say, January 6th fugitives. They said that there are 4 fugitives from Tampa, Florida. One of them is a member of the Proud Boys, which, you know, they throw that name in there just so that you already think very low of this individual. How dare he be a Proud Boy? It's just fascinating. You keep seeing. This is September 5th, 2023 today. And we are still seeing the FBI and the DOJ put so much concentration on January 6th, oftentimes nonviolent people who didn't break anything in the Capitol. They didn't vandalize anything. They didn't hit anyone. But they still are not only having, the FBI on the hunt for them, similar to your friend Chad, Nathan Hughes.
Yeah.
He just got picked up
Right.
by the FBI, and so you're seeing them put all of these resources into it. You're seeing these people get sentences of 17 years, 18 years for no violence. It's mind-boggling to me. What do you make of that?
Scary words.
Yeah.
If you use the words of a founding father,
Right.
if you use revolutionary style rhetoric, things that we've studied, those of us who study those types of things,
Right.
and you use those words either leading up to or after the day, you're just as likely to be convicted of some sort of conspiracy to overthrow the government, having done nothing whatsoever. And that's what's happening in so many of these cases, and especially what I've witnessed in the trials that I've covered myself.
When you're in the room, can you ask to jump to a certain time code? Can you curate which time code, what hour you want to go to, or is someone over your shoulder?
No, nobody's over our shoulders whatsoever. We've been left alone to look for what we went in there to find. And I have, as a matter of fact, in this notebook right here, I have hours of time codes and camera numbers already ready to submit my request for this time for the stories that we're building right now.
And a couple quick fire questions. Are you under any gag, any NDA of what you've seen? Can you get access to the footage? Can you redistribute the footage? Can the American people, because when McCarthy said the footage is going to come out, we're talking about the American people seeing
Right.
the footage.
Well, that was certainly how they made it sound.
Of course. So will the American people ever see can you select, okay, I want hour 105 to hour 115, and I'm going to be able to show that to the American people? Or?
Ostensibly, yes, but if you remember, even when Tucker did his first night of release, they blurred some walls out and did that sort of thing. So under the new guidelines, they say that they'll be blurring out Capitol Police officers' faces. Any request that I make when we finally submit for the batch of video that we want for our big story that's coming, we will have to run that past the Capitol Police, their security concerns, and so we don't know what we'll get. Now, the problem with that is I have already seen that, and I've also brought other eyeballs in to see it as well. So we have witnesses besides myself who have seen the footage. If they deny it, then it becomes the story of the cover-up of the cover-up.
So at the end of the day, what is the end goal? I mean, you're pouring through all of this stuff. Is this the exoneration and evidence for people that are innocent that are being accused? Is it just is an overlook and a summary of the entire debacle? Or, I mean, what do we gain out of all of this?
Specifically on the particular story that I'm working on, I was sitting in one of the trials back last fall, and in that trial, I saw something that did not ring true. It was one of those moments between the judge and the lead prosecuting attorney that I, just by instinct, thought I saw collusion, body language, the connection didn't work. I saw the panic of the prosecutor. I saw the panic of the judge in suppressing evidence. And then I started the process of digging myself. And as I dug further and further and further, I finally got granted the opportunity to get inside that video room. And I knew exactly where to go. I knew exactly what I was looking for. And then in the 3 full days that I've had already, I never intended to spend all my time on this one story. I went in there with about 6 different stories I wanted to harvest video for. And the story that I thought I knew was shady, it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew.
You know, but it's a needle in a haystack theory, but when you know where you want to find the needle, and I think you don't have to, exposing the fact that there's, can I say foul play, tampering, you know, then brings the whole batch in question. You know, and I think that's the point. It's, you know, it's be very, very efficient and effective and thorough on this one thing and say, look, this whole thing stinks to high heaven.
And that's what is going to happen. I think that when we reveal a couple of these key moments of not only evidence tampering, evidence suppression, creating of evidence that did not exist out of whole cloth, what we have seen with our own eyes in that video room, that the potential exists that somebody's going to hit the pause button. Might be an appellate of court, and somebody might say, okay, let's stop right now and let's go back and look at everything.
Certainly if there's someone acting in good faith, that's what they would do. So when do we get to know the story, Steve? You're killing us here.
Work faster.
I know. When do we get to know it?
3 hours a week. Come on, Steve.
Everybody is killing me on that. And on the platform formerly known as Twitter, X, I get ripped to shreds every day, and I get accused of hating it. I've been accused of being a Fed. I've been accused of all the things that we see on social media like that. People are dying. People are being put away and it's my fault because I haven't released this. But let me tell you, we're working with Congress on this story. Yeah. I'm working directly with congressional investigators, congressional attorneys. I'm working with their staff members, working with chiefs of staff of congressmen, because this story is going to rock Chapel Hill. I'm Chapel Hill. I live in Raleigh.
It should rock Chapel Hill.
It should rock Chapel Hill.
It should rock Chapel Hill too, brother.
The whole triangle. Yeah. Rock Duke, and while you had it, Rock Duke as well.
Chapel Hill's where my daughter
Forest, all of them.
went to college. But no, it's one of those things where we have to, and it's cliche, but we have to dot all the I's. We have to cross all the T's. We have to be exactly right. Yeah. And we have to have all of the footage, not just where we find the event, but then they'll tell us, oh, well, that happened somewhere else, or we have to have everything in order to seal the deal. Yeah. And that's really important to this, and that's the only reason for the delay. I mean, we could tell the story right now, right? But we've got to put the video together and figure out how we want to present it, and there's some other very important work that has to be done, because we have to subpoena or FOIA request some documents that are still under court seal by the DOJ, and these are the things that got me involved in this investigation in the first place, was when I saw what they had changed in particular documents that are under seal that I can't talk about right now.
Hey, let me ask you a question you probably don't want to answer or can't answer. Have you seen video evidence at this point that corroborates your feeling of collusion between the judge and the prosecutor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. 100%.
Wow. Interesting.
I received a...
and that's a case, a situation.
Yes, one.
Well, it just allows you to open Pandora's box and say, now let's open
Well, I mean, the Jacob Chansley thing, the shaman, I mean, he was exonerated basically because of video with Tucker Carlson and all of this stuff. So that's why I want to know. I mean, is it... Are we seeing the evidence?
There's another case that has already been revealed by Joe Hanneman from the Epic Times, and he was sitting next to me at one of the consoles there at the Capitol for 3 days, and we were looking at each other's finds and discoveries, and he was working on the Officer Brian Sicknick story. That's the officer who died the next day, and of course they arrested 2 men that basically became in the DOJ, the cop killers that allegedly sprayed him with the pepper spray, and then that set off whatever eventually became the stroke or the heart attack or whatever that he died from the next day. So in the process of sitting next to Joe, as he's working on that video find, Joe's like, come here, and I'm leaning over and looking, and then our mouths were hanging open, because in these individuals' trial, one particular, his name was Julian Cater. I think he was sentenced to 82 months, and in the trial, they showed his extended arm spraying one of those little pocket keychain pepper sprays, and then they cut away. This is what the prosecution presented in the trial. Then they cut away, and they show Sicknick recoiling and putting, water in his eyes, that sort of thing. Except that in real life, Sicknick was 15 or 20 feet away, and when Julian Cater extended his arm for the spray, he sprayed Officer Carolyn Edwards, and he never was anywhere near Sicknick, but he was the cop killer.
Wow.
Camera angles, buddy. Hollywood.
This is just the tip of the iceberg.
It is.